Have you ever woken up already tired? Not physically, but the kind of tired that no amount of sleep can fix. That quiet kind of exhaustion, like your soul has been running for years, dodging hurt, swallowing silence, stretching yourself for everyone, and still, somehow, not enough. There's a name for this, though you may not have ever said it out loud: emotional fatigue. But let me tell you, if this sounds like you, you are not broken, you are not weak, you are not alone. In this video, we're going somewhere deep, into the heart of that fatigue, into the places most people avoid: the invisible aches, the quiet heartbreaks, the parts of you that smile while screaming inside. And somehow, through that, we'll walk towards something else too: clarity, softness, strength, the kind that doesn't shout, but sits with you in the dark. If you've ever felt like you're constantly holding it together for everyone else, if you've learned to hide your hurt behind helping others, if you're tired of being strong all the time, this is for you. So take a breath. You don't have to rush here. This space is made for you. And hey, if you find even a moment of peace or reflection here, you might want to subscribe, not out of obligation, but as a way to keep this space close. A space that sees you, that remembers your humanity when the world forgets. Let's begin. There's something haunting about the kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up in your voice, or your face, or even your posture. It lingers somewhere deeper in the spaces between your thoughts, in the pause before your "I'm fine," in the moments you stare blankly at a wall, feeling everything and nothing at once. You weren't always like this. You used to have light in your eyes, dreams in your chest, laughter that came easily. But over time, something shifted. Not in one big collapse. It was slower than that. Softer. Like a series of small betrayals, a promise unkept here, a boundary ignored there, 1,000 moments of giving more than you had. And now you're tired in a way that makes no sense to those around you. They see your life and assume it's okay. You have a job, maybe a relationship, people who say they care, and still, there's this strange emptiness. A sense of being alive but not fully living. You might not even remember the last time someone really asked how you were, not out of politeness, but with presence. The kind of question that doesn't rush, doesn't fix, doesn't turn the focus back to themselves, just stays, holds you wordlessly, while you try to find your own name under all the roles you've learned to play. Some days, you tell yourself to just push through. It's what you've always done, right? You wake up, perform the script of your life, and somewhere between sunrise and sunset, you forget to check in with your own heart. You numb, you scroll, you overthink, you pour energy into things that quietly drain you, and then you wonder why you feel empty again. There's a wound inside you, not a dramatic one, a quiet one. The kind you got from always being the one who understood, the one who forgave first, the one who held it together when no one else could. You became so used to being needed that you forgot how to need. Or maybe you stopped allowing yourself to, because somewhere deep down, needing started to feel dangerous. But love, real love, doesn't punish your needs. It doesn't demand your silence or stretch you so thin you forget what it feels like to rest. Somewhere along the line, someone taught you that love meant shrinking, or serving, or surviving. And even now, a part of you still believes that. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just exhausted from living out an old inherited script, one where your worth depends on how much you give, how much you endure, how much you disappear for others. But listen carefully. Exhaustion is not weakness. It's a message, a whisper from your soul saying, enough. Not because you've failed, but because you finally noticed this isn't living. There is another way. Sometimes, we confuse peace with silence. We think if we don't speak, if we don't ask for more, if we don't ruffle any feathers, we're creating harmony. But what we're actually doing is teaching the world how to overlook us, how to step over our boundaries, how to love us halfway. And after a while, that halfway love starts to feel like the only kind we're allowed. You might not even remember the first time you decided it was safer to stay small. Maybe it was when someone ignored your tears, or told you were too much, or laughed when you opened up. Maybe it wasn't even words, just the quiet shrug of someone turning away when you needed them to lean in. That's the thing about pain. It doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it seeps in gently, a drip, drip, drip of unmet needs and invisible wounds. You learn to call that normal. You learn to survive by being the one who adjusts, the one who listens more than they speak, the one who keeps the peace, even when it costs them their own. But there's a cost to that. There's a cost to constantly making yourself easy to love, to always being the flexible one, the understanding one, the one who never needs too much, never asks too loudly, never breaks down in front of others. And the cost is this: you begin to forget what your own voice sounds like. You begin to disappear from your own life, and then you wonder why you're so tired, why you look in the mirror and feel like a stranger, why you cry without knowing why joy feels distant, like something meant for other people. But it's not that you're broken. It's that you've spent so long abandoning yourself, you forgot what wholeness feels like. Can I tell you something you might not believe yet? You are allowed to be seen, fully, even in your mess, even in your anger, even in your need, especially in your need, because that's where your soul breathes again. That's where healing begins, not in hiding, but in coming back to yourself, in peeling off the layers of performance, in saying, I am not okay, and letting that be enough. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify your exhaustion. You don't have to prove your pain. It's real, and it matters, and you matter. Maybe you've spent your whole life carrying other people's emotions, their disappointments, their chaos, their silence, and no one ever stopped to ask, who carries you? Let this moment be that question. Who carries you? You've been surviving for so long that you forgot softness is an option. But it is. You don't have to keep proving your strength by how much you can take. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is put it all down and say, this hurts. Not for pity, not for permission, but for your own liberation, because pain is not weakness. Pain is a doorway, and when you finally walk through it, not as a warrior but as a human, bare, bruised, beautiful, that's when the real healing begins. You might be wondering why it hurts so much to let go of things that hurt you, why it's so hard to walk away from the people who make you feel small, why you keep going back to situations that leave you empty. It's not because you're weak, it's because part of you still hopes they'll change. That this time, if you try a little harder, love a little more gently, wait a little longer, maybe they'll finally see you, choose you. Stay, but listen, that part of you isn't foolish. It's just the child in you still looking for closure that was never given. Still believing that love means proving yourself. That being chosen means being perfect. That your pain only matters when someone else validates it. And I know that letting go feels like a betrayal, like giving up. But there's a difference between giving up and getting free. Getting free is not abandonment, it's return. A return to the you that you buried beneath all the pleasing. The you that knows peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of alignment. The you that doesn't need to twist and contort just to be loved. You don't have to keep trying to heal in the same environment that hurt you. You don't have to make a home in someone else's emotional desert. And you definitely don't have to keep explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That's not love. That's survival in a costume. You were not born to beg for connection. You were born with the birthright to belong, not perform. To rest, not chase. To be known, not fixed. But that shift doesn't happen overnight. Healing isn't a linear road. Sometimes you'll feel like you're moving forward, and then one smell, one sentence, one memory pulls you back to a younger version of yourself who just wants to be held. And that's okay, because healing isn't about deleting the past. It's about holding it gently, without letting it define your future. It's about looking at that younger self, the one who kept quiet, kept pleasing, kept waiting and whispering, I see you now, and I'm not leaving you behind anymore. There's a kind of grief that comes with healing, a grief for the time you lost, the energy you poured into places that never poured back, the versions of yourself you had to become just to feel safe. Grieve that. It's sacred. But then, after the tears have dried and the silence settles, comes something softer, a stillness, a breath, a knowing that you are still here, that you made it, that despite everything, the heartbreaks, the rejections, the nights you curled up wondering if anyone would ever really understand you, you kept going. And maybe for the first time you realize, you don't have to keep running. You don't have to keep pretending. You don't have to keep being fine. You get to be real. You get to be whole. You get to be home in yourself. There's a strange loneliness that comes when you begin to choose yourself. At first, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss, like quiet, like walking away from the only language you've ever known, the language of overgiving, over-explaining, and the world, so used to your compliance, might not applaud this new version of you. They might call you selfish. They might say you've changed. They might grow distant, uncomfortable, confused by the fact that you no longer shrink just to make them feel bigger. And that's where the doubt creeps in. That whisper in your mind, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I should go back, but don't. Because that ache, that hollow space where approval used to live, that's not emptiness. That's space being made for something real. Something that doesn't need you to fold yourself in half to be accepted. Something that doesn't punish you for having needs, or for saying no, or for simply existing as you are. You've been loyal to your pain for so long that loyalty itself became your prison. But healing means breaking that contract even when it's terrifying. Even when it means standing alone in your truth while everything in you longs to be held. Here's what no one tells you. Healing will break your heart before it mends it, because it will show you all the places you've betrayed yourself, all the times you said yes when your body screamed no, all the ways you've clung to crumbs just to feel full. And it will hurt. Not because you're failing, but because you're finally seeing clearly. There's grief in that clarity, but there's power in it too. Because once you start to see, you can't unsee. Once you start to feel, you can't go back to numb. And once you start to speak, you can't keep swallowing your voice just to make others comfortable. You start to realize something revolutionary. You never needed to be better. You needed to be honest. Honest about the toll it's taken. Honest about the nights you've cried silently so no one would worry. Honest about the resentment you've buried under your smile. Honest about the dreams you abandoned to keep someone else's love. And that honesty, it's not chaos. It's not weakness. It's the beginning of sovereignty. Real healing isn't pretty. It doesn't always look like morning routines and gratitude journals. Sometimes it looks like collapsing on the floor and not knowing who you are anymore. Sometimes it looks like canceling plans because your soul is too heavy to pretend. Sometimes it's letting go of people who once felt like home because you finally see the cost of staying. But every time you choose yourself, even in the smallest way, you reclaim something. A breath, a truth, a fragment of your voice, and slowly, piece by piece, you begin to remember. You are not too much. You were just in places too small to hold you. There's a moment in healing that no one prepares you for: the quiet after the storm. Not the chaos of leaving, not the fire of awakening, but the stillness that follows. When you're no longer drowning, but you're not quite on shore either. When the noise is gone, but so is the comfort of familiarity. And you find yourself asking, now what? It's disorienting, isn't it? To finally be free from what hurt you, only to realize you're now face to face with yourself. No distractions, no drama, no performance, just you. And for the first time, you notice the weight of your own presence. You see, most of us were never taught how to simply be. We were taught to do, to prove, to strive, to earn love through usefulness, to earn rest through exhaustion, to earn worth through sacrifice. But being, that feels foreign, uncomfortable, too quiet. And yet, it's the most sacred thing you'll ever reclaim. Because in that stillness, you begin to notice parts of you that got left behind. The part that used to dream, the part that used to play, the part that didn't know how to filter themselves just to be palatable, the part that wasn't afraid to be seen. That's when you realize the real you has always been waiting, patiently, underneath the coping, beneath the roles, behind the masks, waiting for the day you'd stop running from your own reflection. But it's not easy. Sometimes you'll try to fill the stillness. You'll reach for old habits, old people, old patterns. Not because you want them, but because they're familiar. And familiar feels safe, even when it's painful. That's okay. It's part of it. Healing isn't about doing it perfectly. It's about noticing, oh, I'm reaching for this because I feel empty right now, and then choosing with compassion not to abandon yourself again. And on some nights, when the world is asleep and you're left alone with your thoughts, the doubt might whisper again. What if I never feel whole? But let me tell you something, wholeness isn't a destination. It's not something you arrive at after checking all the boxes. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to the you that's been here all along, the one who knows how to rest, the one who knows how to love without losing themselves, the one who no longer seeks permission to exist. This version of you, the one emerging from the ashes, the one learning to sit in the quiet, they are sacred. They are powerful in ways you can't yet see, because they're not driven by fear or approval anymore. They're driven by truth. And truth, even when it's messy, even when it hurts, always leads to freedom. So when the stillness comes, let it. Let it wash over you like a soft wave. Let it show you that your presence alone is enough. Let it whisper what the world tried to make you forget. You are not here to perform, you are here to live. Maybe no one ever told you this, so let me be the one who does. You were never meant to carry everything. You were never meant to be the strong one all the time, the one who never breaks, the one who always shows up even when her heart is shattered into 100 silent pieces. Somewhere along the way, you were handed that role, maybe by family, maybe by culture, maybe by circumstance, and you wore it like armor, because it felt safer than being vulnerable, because it gave you some illusion of control. But strength without softness is just survival. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve to rest without guilt, to fall apart without fear, to be supported not because you've earned it, not because you're at your limit, but because you're human. You were never meant to fix everyone else while neglecting the tender ache in your own chest. You were never meant to constantly prove your worth by what you do for others. That's not love. That's self-erasure dressed as devotion. And maybe, somewhere deep down, you've known this, but the idea of choosing yourself feels foreign, even wrong, because you were taught that love is selfless, that good people don't say no, that putting yourself first is selfish. But here's the truth. Self-sacrifice is not a virtue when it costs you your peace, your sanity, your soul. There is nothing noble about abandoning yourself. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you don't care. It means you finally understand that your needs matter too, that your energy is sacred, that your time is precious, that your heart wasn't made to be a dumping ground for everyone else's chaos. You are not a fixer. You are not a sponge. You are not a bottomless well of yes. You are a person, a living, breathing, feeling person. And maybe the most radical thing you can do in a world that profits off your exhaustion is to slow down, to say no, to take up space, to rest, to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. Let that settle in. You are allowed to disappoint others if it means being true to you. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries, for your healing, for your peace. You've spent so much of your life shaping yourself around others, their expectations, their moods, their comfort. But now it's time to shape your life around your truth. It will feel unfamiliar. It might even feel wrong at first. But that's only because you're used to living in a pattern that punished your authenticity. Keep going, because every time you choose yourself, every time you pause instead of perform, every time you say this is enough, you're rewriting the script. You're showing the little you inside that love doesn't have to hurt. That rest is not a reward, but a right. That you don't have to earn your place in the world. You already belong exactly as you are. Somewhere, maybe not too long ago, you sat in silence and whispered to yourself, I just want to feel like myself again. But here's the truth that might sting a little. You've outgrown who you used to be. That version of you, the one who tolerated too much, smiled through the ache, gave more than they received. She was doing her best, and she carried you here. But you don't need her anymore. You're becoming someone new, someone softer but stronger, someone clearer, even when uncertain, someone who no longer needs to prove their worth through endless giving. And that, my friend, is sacred ground. You're not going backward. You're not trying to be who you were before the heartbreak, before the burnout, before the betrayals. You're becoming someone else entirely, someone who can hold her past without becoming it. There's a mourning in that, too, letting go of your old identity. The people who only knew that version of you might not understand who you're becoming. They might miss the girl who always said yes, the one who never pushed back, the one who absorbed their chaos and called it love. But you don't owe them your exhaustion anymore. You owe yourself your presence. And slowly, piece by piece, you start to feel it, that flicker in your chest. That soft knowing. That breath that doesn't feel so heavy. It's the beginning of trust. Not in others. Not yet. But in you, trusting that you can hold yourself now. That you don't need someone to rescue you. That you are the safety you've been searching for. And when the fear creeps in, because it will, when the old stories whisper that you're being too much or too distant or too hard to love, pause, take a breath, and remember, those aren't your words. Those are echoes of places you've outgrown. You're not too much. You're just finally allowing yourself to take up the space you always deserved. You're not distant. You're discerning. You've learned the difference between intimacy and access. You're not hard to love. You're just no longer willing to accept love that comes with conditions. This is what it means to heal. It's not a straight line. It's a spiral. You'll revisit old wounds, sometimes in sharper ways. But each time, you'll meet them with more grace, more compassion, more boundaries. And each time you choose yourself not in ego, but in truth, the world shifts a little. Not because everything changes outside of you, but because you begin to see more clearly. You begin to remember what your heart sounds like when it's not drowning. And maybe for the first time in your life, you stop apologizing for your softness, your slowness, your silence, because they are not weaknesses. They are your medicine. There's a moment you'll come to, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will arrive when you no longer feel the need to explain your pain. You won't need to convince anyone that what you went through mattered, that your tears weren't dramatic, that your silence wasn't indifference, that your distance wasn't coldness but self-protection. You'll simply know. And that knowing, it's the beginning of peace. Because for so long, you've lived in a world that gaslighted your reality, that asked you to be quiet when you wanted to scream, that told you to smile when your world was collapsing, that praised your resilience while ignoring your wounds. And you adapted, because you're smart, because you had to, because surviving was more important than understanding. But you're not surviving anymore. You're remembering. You're remembering how it feels to breathe deeply, to rest without fear, to laugh and mean it, to choose people who don't trigger the ache, but soften it. People who hold space, not expectations, who don't need you to explain your boundaries. They honor them before you even speak. And you'll still miss the old life sometimes. Not because you want it back, but because it was all you knew. It was your normal. The chaos, the overthinking, the striving. There's grief in releasing what we built our identities around, even when it hurt us. But this new life, this quiet, grounded, rooted life, it's not loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It creeps in gently. It looks like saying no and not explaining why. It looks like letting the phone ring. It looks like walking away from conversations that drain you. It looks like choosing presence over performance. And more than anything, it looks like softness, not as a weakness, but as a revolution. Because softness in a world that demanded your hardness is a radical act. To feel, to rest, to cry without shame, to say, I don't have it in me today. To honor your energy like it's sacred because it is. You no longer owe your pain an audience. You no longer need to prove your healing to anyone. You are allowed to bloom quietly. You are allowed to become someone that others no longer recognize, especially if recognizing you meant only knowing your pain. Let them go. Let them wonder. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. And if you're still afraid, that's okay. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing yourself even while shaking, even while doubting, even while grieving. You've come so far. You're already free. Now live like it. And so you begin again, not in grand declarations, not in dramatic shifts, but in the smallest of choices, the way you speak to yourself in the morning, the way you honor your fatigue without guilt, the way you leave space for silence when the world gets too loud. This is what healing truly looks like, not the perfect version you imagined, not the Instagram story with the glowing candles and soft music, but this, the quiet resolve of a woman who has seen her own darkness and chose to stay anyway. The gentle strength of someone who has been shattered and stitched herself back together with threads of self-trust. You will still feel tired sometimes. That's not failure. That's your body reminding you that your journey has been long, that carrying invisible wounds for years takes a toll, that you don't need to rush toward wholeness. You are already whole, even in your tiredness. And you might find yourself longing for old patterns, old people, old versions of you, not because they were good, but because they were known. Familiarity can masquerade as love when you're still healing. But trust yourself. You're not who you used to be. You see red flags now. You honor your gut. You feel discomfort in spaces that once felt like home because now your soul knows better. She no longer tolerates half-truths or almost love or silence dressed as safety. That ache you carry, it's not weakness, it's memory, and it's sacred because it reminds you of how far you've come, of all the times you were left alone with your emotions and still chose to feel them, of the nights you comforted yourself with shaking hands and a heart that only knew how to break quietly. You are not just a survivor. You are a mirror, a living reminder that healing is messy and holy and terrifying and beautiful. And when you speak now, even in whispers, people feel it. They hear your truth, even if you say nothing. They sense your depth not because you flaunt it, but because it exists. The people meant for you now will feel like exhale. You won't have to explain your boundaries. You won't have to tone yourself down. They will meet you where you are, not to fix, not to save, but to witness. You're no longer looking for a hero. You became the person you needed. And yes, there will still be moments when you're tempted to go back, to overgive, to prove, to silence yourself for peace. But that's when you pause, place your hand on your heart and whisper, not this time, because you remember now what it felt like to be unseen. And you will never let yourself feel invisible again. You're not here to perform. You're here to live, breathe, heal, be. You made it through every version of yourself that thought they couldn't. And now you get to write the rest.